A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So, what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. Today, I've got with me Alon Waks. He's the VP of Marketing over at Bizzabo. Alon, how's it going today, man?
Hey, everything is great. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Great to have you, man. We're going to be talking about some do's and don'ts of in-person events and how to really strategically align your content team and your events team for better ABM across all of this. Before we jump into that, I would love for you to share a little bit of context for people, Alon, that don't know you, aren't familiar with Bizzabo. What are you guys up to these days?
Sure. Glad to do it. So Bizzabo has been around for a while. We are the event success platform company, which pretty much means that events are not just about managing them, the logistics. It's about really showing the business outcome and ensuring that everything that you do from agenda registration, on-site, pre-event, post-event is all about the data. And the data is connected to the business outcome. So Bizzabo is really about driving large events, hosted events, and enabling you to have technology that aligns to your business goals.
I love it, Alon. We've been thinking more about our event strategy here at Sweetfish over the last year, so I'm excited to dive into this. Before we get into some of the tactics, why you guys see this alignment between your content teams and your event teams to be more effective, and alignment with sales has to play into that as well, too, right?
For sure. The modern way to drive content and engagement with an audience has led to the content teams, the events team, and the demand team having to work really close together and being actually part of the same organization. For me, it is me as the leader that actually runs all of these teams. It's funny, we just had on our podcast the SAP head of events, and she talked a lot about how content and events are becoming one organization, also at massive companies like SAP. The reason for that is your events, especially if you host big events with different audiences, different personas, enable you to not just test your content, not just understand what your persona as a target audience cares about, but also enable you to become a content curation machine. And then these events actually later lead you to be able to do very good and very focused, targeted digital campaigns that take the learning of persona X at region Y was interested and highly engaged in an event with content case study of XYZ. Let's roll it out in a webinar and a campaign series, and then you know that you're going to get better traction. So events are not just the outcome of digital, it actually leads to digital post-events.
I love that. So tell me a little bit more about that and what you guys have done or what the team at SAP shared with you, that content curation from events leading to more digital. Can you give us a few examples there?
Yeah, I'll give you a great example. So we have a series of events called Experience This, which focuses on experiences, in-person and digital. We partner with On24, great partners of ours that are doing webinars, and we do the in-person events. So we talk to the people about what is the value of life events, the power of life is what we call it. And when you do that, you think about where are geo clusters or locations in the world where people are more focused on marketing, in-person events, hosted events. And we saw that we just did one in Seattle, we did one in Boston, we're going to do in San Francisco and in New York. So in the US, you're looking for manufacturing services, technology, Fiserv, and similar companies like media that really care about the power of live, whether it's digital live or in-person events. And so the way to look at it is you understand where are these people located, what kind of content are the best fit to interact with and engage with. And from those learnings, from intense learnings on digital and in-person learnings from your prior event, you take all of that together and you define your event strategy. And that event strategy needs to place in front of people the right content. And we saw that a panel works well for director level and below people of interaction about how I've done it and learnings from people that have done it. And we saw that the podcast is actually working much better for executive persona to really give them something to learn about, very thought leadership about why you should do things. And that's how we take it on the road.
Yeah. And so did that come from live conversations and pulling that information from being in front of folks? Did you organize it in some surveys? You had event attendees. How did you guys go about gathering that? I mean, I love that you're talking about podcasting being effective for director level and above, since that's what we do. So that makes me smile. But just curious about how you guys tactically went about gathering some of that.
Sure. So as I mentioned, Bizzabo is not just an event management solution. We are about a data layer. Think about ABM on top of events. So we believe in the power of data. Data enables you to make decisions through insights. So collecting data from our events, collecting data for our partners and clients for their events enables us to understand what content is best for which persona or audience and at which location and at what format, case study, video, short form, roundtable. Taking all of that learning from our event series, taking more learnings from obviously digital intent, talking to people, reviews, collect all of that together, enable us to be in best position to understand what should be our content strategy and where the events fit into driving that learning and thought leadership in person to people, which gets the best result for different levels of audience.
I love it. So you guys have a little bit of a cheat code being able to use your own platform there. But I think the learning there, that finding some way to gather that data and look at, the persona types, the seniority level, the location, and the content type is something that folks should be thinking about in theory, and taking that from events where you've got people's attention and taking advantage of that to gather that data is something that you can do regardless. So I love that, Alon. Let's circle back to something you mentioned earlier at the top of the interview, and that's structuring your team, aligning events and contents. What are some of the common areas where there's just disconnect, maybe with some of the teams that you guys have worked with that started working with you, and you've recognized some of this disconnect and some of the advice that you're giving folks to better align those two teams?
Sure. So one typical thing we see is the events team is siloed from the content team, which means they come in and say, okay, where should we go do events? Okay, we know where a lot of our clients are now. Here they are. Let's go do events over there. And then content, come fill in the gaps by XYZ. You have these three sessions. And of course, we need to do a keynote. Who doesn't need to do a keynote? And then let's bring in a keynote. Let's pay $50,000 for the speaker. That is the reverse engineering of what should happen, like an inbound funnel. Think outbound. What do the people in this region care about? Look at anecdotal data from your systems, your CRM, your won, your lost deals, the persona, and so forth. What kind of content have you served to them, or have you seen not fit them? Build that hierarchy. And then with your content team, say, should we even do an event there? Maybe we shouldn't do an event. Maybe we should partner with somebody that has an engaged audience there, i.e., like we partner with different people in different regions because A, they have an audience, B, it's complementary to the topic of interest. And then put together the event after you think about the content. So an example we're doing under our brand called In Person, which is what we believe in the power of in person. And our event series is around a podcast. And the podcast is on stage. And then we have the panels and experiential stuff afterwards. We start with, what is the audience in New York City, which is the next one we're doing, care about? Well, they care about people in media. They care about big events, the marathon or the Macy's parade and all of those themes that people here say, wow, we're inspired by them. It's going to be a bit different if we do one in San Francisco and it's a tech audience of mid-market enterprise companies. Should I bring for that somebody who's a marathon that San Francisco has one, but it's not the same? Or should I bring the person who runs Oracle World? Who inspires them? Understanding the persona is more than understanding what content do they consume from you, but which companies do they respect and who do they want to be like when they grow up.
Today's growth story is about a brand we all know well, Airbnb. When they were trying to maximize growth among work travelers, Airbnb knew they needed to develop and execute a content strategy to reach multiple personas at different stages of the customer journey. Enter HubSpoke.Marketing. HubSpoke managed creative content development and crafted a custom publishing process that allowed Airbnb to develop more content in less time. The end result? A lot of content across multiple channels, all strategically nurturing leads through to conversion. Within the first 6 months, Airbnb nearly tripled the number of companies enrolled in their Airbnb for Work program. They also saw huge increases in user adoption, with work travelers booking longer stays and more guests per booking. If you're looking for strategic content at scale, I've got a hunch Hub and Spoke can help. Head over to HubSpoke.Marketing/growth to schedule your consultation with a content specialist today. That's HubSpoke.Marketing/growth. All right, let's get back to the show.
I love that. I mean, it's just good marketing, right? Knowing your customer before you plan to do something that to try and reach them, and this kind of twist on it in thinking about the geographic nuances, which makes sense. If you're doing in-person events, what is the variable? It's being in person, and you've got folks in a specific region. So I think that's great advice as well, Alon. Let's talk a little bit about, we talk about content working with the events teams, and two areas that they're typically working on is what content are we putting in front of folks leading up to the event? And then how are we following up with different things after the event, whether that's email campaigns or retargeted ads and those sorts of things. So let's touch on both of those and maybe some do's and don'ts that you see in each of those areas. Let's talk about leading up to events with content first.
Yeah, the whole topic of pre and post communication is extremely interesting. You have to differentiate between your event, i.e. a hosted event, field event, and a trade show that you're sponsoring or participating in. Starting with hosted events, this is much more about content, learning, and meeting people, and you have much more control. You should never tell them, oh, we have another happy hour, another this. You might be bringing in the wrong people. Focus on what is going to be in the event for them. People take time away. It's expensive, even if they don't travel, to go to an event. It's alternative cost. They need to come out of it with something that's tangible and something that's memorable, an experience. So you can either focus on that angle or the anchor. The anchor is we added another speaker, or we added another roundtable. I'm inviting you to people like yourself. This goes back to the matchmaking of trying to be one-to-one, where marketing is more one-to-few. Who is going to be at the event? What do these people do? What is their score from the last things they've done with you on digital? And then try to give them different journeys. We call this personalization. We have the ability to do it, and we do it also in our marketing. You give them different journeys, i.e. somebody who's a director who is shown intent for ABM tools, give them that journey. Somebody who is an executive, give them an invitation to the executive CMO dinner, and not to 5 breakfast, because they might miss it because they're going to go back to the office on day 2. It is a one-to-one journey, dynamic journey capability, and you need to matchmake it so that if you have 1,000 people come to your event, they can get similar to 1,000 unique experiences. Now let me talk a second about trade shows. That's very different. You get a list of 5,000 people that are probably going to be at the show. You give it to your BDR team. They start cracking the phone, writing emails. She asks, come here, meet us. Dreamforce is around the corner. And the amount of emails I'm getting is ridiculous for everything else. Show me value. At a trade show, I'm busy. Everybody wants to meet with me, and I want to matchmake the things I care about. You have to look at what people like me care about. It's usually meeting other people like me who can advocate. And then be very careful about over spamming people, because the last thing a VP of marketing wants to get is 20 emails from your same BDR saying why they should meet with you. So very much curated content, and that's very important in the pre-event.
Yeah. How many of those emails are you getting, Alon, that are just like, hey, if you stop by, we've got some great swag for you?
Yeah, so it's quite a lot. and the funny thing about it is I can afford my own, AirPods. I really can buy my own coffee. And I've been known to buy my own beer as well if I want, or have beers with friends. So I love the invitation. But for every event, my line of focus, and I've done this for many years, is what's the angle, what's the anchor? If the anchor is somebody interesting I'll meet, that's cool. If the angle is it's a cool new restaurant or great experience of food or experience of a show or experience of different, you will draw a higher level audience. If the end goal is come have a beer with a BDR who wants to sell something, respectfully, that's going to be a little bit challenging.
I got it. Great advice. Again, it's about thinking about what your buyers are going into the event thinking about and then reverse engineering from there. How about post-event follow-up? You did a great job breaking down pre-event, some do's and don'ts there. Post-event can be just as crucial, if not more so. So what are some of the things that you recommend to folks there?
Sometimes post-event can be tricky, and this is part of the pitfall that even we have tough times with, is assigning the people to the right people to follow up with. Who's warm enough? Who did you meet that really expressed interest in what I call a hot lead that should be immediately sales ready, give it to the person, jump on it, ask for the meeting? Is that too much? Is it like a demo or not? So it's always the more notes and capturing of information you can add from all the people that interacted with somebody, the better. That's one. The second is use the data. You have to use the data. And the data means what did they engage with? What did they do on the app? Who did they talk to in the community? How did they rate session? Which session did they go to or not? Which session did they decide to go into or not? If you have a proper event technology and look at your event seriously, all of this data is in front of you. And you can ABM accounts from the event without even talking to them, just what they did by looking at engagement. So that means you have all of this in front of you. Then you need to curate to them the next step. You should know that your buyer journey of people who were interested in 3 sessions revolving around this technology or this solution or this level are ready for a discovery day. Offer that to them. If not, give them one more piece of nurture and invite them to the webinar to learn of somebody who's done a discovery day already. So it's about a buyer journey. Nothing here rocket science. I didn't invent this. I just look at the data very carefully and try to put them into buckets of continuous. The main challenge I see a lot of times post-event is especially trade shows or hosted events of many people. You get bombarded by people asking you to meet with them afterwards. But I haven't raised my hand high enough. B, it's like, maybe you should give me value instead of saying, hey, I want to pass you to a sales guy to tell me about a solution. You got to mirror what I did at the event, what is called mirroring intent. Very important to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, this common theme that you're advocating for, Alon, is again, I said it before, just good marketing. Start with where your customer's at, who they are, what they care about, but be specific since you have this data about, which sessions did they register for, which ones did they actually go to, which ones did they rate well. You can use a lot of that to inform your approach. That's going to look different for folks for, as you said, different types of events, your own events, trade shows. But the way that you're advocating for, starting with where is the buyer and who is the buyer, and then approach it as much in a segmented, personalized fashion as you can, you're going to set yourself up for success. I love all of that. Alon, whether it's related to marketing or professional development or personal development, as we wrap things up, I like to ask a lot of our guests about a learning resource that they've been recommending to other colleagues, friends, folks like that. Could be a book or a podcast or anything in between. Would love for you to share something else with listeners if I could pick your brain for one more thing today.
Of course, I actually have 2. One of them is the in-person podcast, which is exactly spelled that way. Listen to the people who do the biggest, best, and most amazing events from B2C to B2B and how they go through personalization and the challenge of having thousands of people at the event and give them an amazing one-to-one experience. Inpersonpodcast.com. I'm a big believer and I've learned a lot. And the second, and that's for people like SAP and IBM and Cisco and Forbes and Dow Jones and all that, really impressive. And the second one is called the ABM Leadership Alliance, ABMLA. This is a consortium alliance of a lot of companies that dabble in ABM, but put together thought leadership and events around what is ABM, how do you outbound, and what are the best practices around it. I challenge all of us to learn. The more I learn every day from people on that forum.
Yep, absolutely. It's a great group. I've talked to several other members of that group and really doing a lot to try and push the category of ABM forward to this next level and help folks do it in a better way, which hopefully folks have taken some good stuff from this interview today along those lines. And I certainly have, so I appreciate it. Alon, listeners are probably going to want to stay connected with you guys, maybe learn a little bit more about what Bizzabo does after listening to this. What's the best way for them to
to reach out or stay connected, man?
Bizzabo.com, in person, and anything about Believing the Power events, you can find us anytime you Google them.
I love it, Alon. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. This was fantastic.
All the best. Thank you so much.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.